This Soonerscoop.com video is streaming in crystal clear 4K resolution on YouTube thanks to Enjoy Vision in Oklahoma City. From the big plays to life's everyday moments, see it all in sharp focus with LASIK at Enjoy Vision. Enjoy Vision. This is where Sooner Scoop Lasix.
Hello and welcome back. Eddie Radosevich, George Stoya here. A Monday, April 28th, Oklahoma. Still waiting on maybe some Jermichael Carter news. We'll get to a little bit of some portal stuff here on the back end. Another week, another recruiting report with Josh McCuistion, talking a little bit more about Bo Bentley as he sets up his official visits. A lot of interest in the linebacker position. Nate Dreiling making some offers as well. Some new offers out on the defensive line. But before we bring Josh in, let us first tell you about our good friends over at William & Lauren, the official custom clothier of OU football. William & Lauren outfits your favorite OU players in custom suits that boost their confidence off the field to match their confidence on the field. Their perfectly tailored clothing ensures every Sooner stands out in comfort and style at prices that make luxury accessible. You can visit William & Lauren in Oklahoma City or in Tulsa in the 918 or online at williamandlauren.com. That is williamandlauren.com. Dress like a champion and make your style as legendary as Oklahoma football. The great George Stoya got his suit ready to go. You're going on Friday, right? Back over to William & Lauren to get it tried on?
Yes, I will be trying on the suit for the first time on Friday, making sure everything fits. So I've been making sure I stay in shape so that
you just got to make sure it fits. It's just a not just a one-day thing because this is a custom suit. You can wear it any time.
Wear it forever. So
very good.
Super excited to get over there on Friday.
Very good. Thank you to William & Lauren. Visit them in Oklahoma City or Tulsa or online as you see behind on the screen at williamandlauren.com. All right, let's bring in Josh McCuistion from Houston HQ here on a Monday, wrapping everything up. On the heels of the NFL draft, we'll get to a couple of the guys that, just the two that were drafted, Billy Bowman and, or I guess Danny Stutzman, then Billy Bowman. Kind of cool that they went almost back-to-back there.
Back-to-back almost.
What was it, 6 picks in between? Josh, good afternoon. How are we?
Guys, doing well. I had the rare occasion of a free night to just watch the second night of the draft. My wife was out. The kids were at a birthday party. It was about as close to heaven as a mid-40s guy can get at this point in my life. So no, I'm enjoying myself, or I guess enjoyed myself.
Headlines aplenty coming out of Green Bay over the weekend with Shedeur Sanders and everything that went in. Dylan Gabriel kind of gets screwed over, even though he went ahead of Shedeur Sanders. That quarterback room in Cleveland, it will be talked about. It will be discussed. Very interesting indeed with the 5 quarterbacks that they have there and now the 2 rookies. So, all right, let's get into it. Speaking of quarterback, Bo Bentley, Steve Wiltfong wrote a story on, I think it was on Friday out of the weekend, just in terms of Bo Bentley and how it's going to, kind of play out here over the next couple of months, or more importantly, I guess the month of June. 3 officials set up, Josh. Georgia on June 6th, Oklahoma on June 13th, LSU on June 20th. This all kind of relates and coincides with Jared Curtis, the number 1 quarterback, who will make his announcement coming up a week from today on May 5th, deciding between Oregon and Georgia. Let's just start with the 3 schools of interest to Bo Bentley, obviously, Georgia, LSU, and Oklahoma. It's the 3 players, right, that we all kind of expected. If Jared Curtis were to end up going to Georgia, as it was predicted from on 3, that would basically take one out. We'll see if he would end up taking that June 6th trip, but just kind of your initial thoughts on everything that has to happen with Bo Bentley here over the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I think the first thing that is interesting about that, because, like we were talking about before we got started, the buzz had been Oregon with Jared Curtis for probably a month now. That's kind of what you were hearing. But, Steve Wiltfong, obviously a lot more plugged into what's going on with Jared Curtis than I am. Seems like he's starting to hear Georgia. That seems to be the way it's trending and the move that's kind of going on. If that's the case, what it makes really interesting to me, because you guys remember when Bo Bentley, when he announced his official visit plans, we talked about June 13th being an interesting choice because there's no other visitors scheduled that weekend. It's just Bo Bentley. So there were 2 ways to look at that. Maybe Oklahoma was kind of hoping a domino like this might fall and they could move it around and pivot as they needed to, or they really wanted to just say, hey, June 13th is going to be it. Like, this is going to be the time. We're going to know. After Jared Curtis makes his decision, if it is Georgia, Georgia's out. and it's going to be OU and LSU. And I don't even know if he'll bother to take the visit to Georgia because, frankly, why would you? I don't know why Georgia would risk upsetting Jared Curtis. Like, I think it would just be a mutual parting of ways. So, with that in mind, it gives OU the opportunity to say, okay, we could do June 13th, or we can do June 6th, where they have what's actually a longer visit list. When you look at what I've got confirmed from June 20th to June 6th actually has more players confirmed at this moment than the barbecue on the 20th. So I think that's kind of an interesting angle that we're going to watch. But at the same time, I absolutely get if on June 13th they just say, we're making you the guy. You are this entire weekend. We're going to shower you with everything we've got.
I kind of think that's what they should do, in my opinion, is make it June 13th, Bo Bentley Day. I don't know, but we'll see how that plays out. Josh, I want to ask you the other domino. If Jared
There's another side to all of this, right?
If Jared Curtis ends up at Georgia was one school that was maybe interested in Jaden O'Neal. So what's the latest on Jaden O'Neal? And I know, is it Florida State that's been pretty involved with him? Is that kind of where you think he might be headed?
That's kind of my feel, which is an interesting deal following Kevin Sperry last year. I mean, that's just kind of I don't think Florida State has it out for Oklahoma by any stretch, but it is an interesting storyline to follow. The other school that I hear some is Auburn, and you wonder if Auburn is kind of saying, hey, look at Jackson Arnold, and he's come here, and he's happy. Now, some of the reviews you've read out of Auburn this spring, I don't know what to make of that. It doesn't sound like it's gone as well as maybe everybody had hoped, but I will say that obviously, if they are truly trying to pursue Jaden O'Neal, they can kind of say, hey, he wasn't happy at Oklahoma. He's happy here. So that'll be an interesting storyline to kind of watch. But those are the two schools that kind of stick out to me if, in fact, Jared Curtis picks Georgia. Again, that's the crazy thing with quarterback recruiting. With offensive line, there's 4, 5, 6 spots in the class. Quarterback, there's pretty much one. So once one domino falls, doors start closing all over the place, and everybody kind of starts jumping in line. We've seen it a little bit, but I think once Jared Curtis falls, I think you'll really start to see things start to fall into place.
It's going to be interesting. It seems like as much as we've talked about this here over the last, feels like 2 months really, on the recruiting report, it seems like maybe we're kind of getting to the end of that tunnel and everything kind of starts falling from a domino perspective on May 5th.
Well, and I wanted to ask, kind of following up on that, Josh, is Bo going to make an announcement shortly after he takes these visits, or is this a situation that he could wait even longer after the visits?
I don't know that he has said publicly what his plan is, but based on talking to people around Salina, people that know him, I don't see him being a guy that drags this out. That's not the feeling I get. Again, guys, we kind of talked about this last week when we really went in on the Jaden O'Neal and Bo Bentley situation. Mm-hmm. I think there is absolutely a scenario, a world where this is already decided. Like, this was already done, but now we're here. We just got to live in the world we're in. And I think Bo Bentley's going to take both these visits, look at LSU, look at Oklahoma, and again, Georgia, if that door is still open, and then he'll make a decision. I would be very surprised if he's any later than the 4th of July, which we know has kind of become like the new, used to be Christmas, now it's the 4th of July. That's when everybody kind of decides right there around that holiday. So again, I don't think OU fans, LSU fans, I don't think they'll have to wait a real long time after that June 20th official to LSU.
When's the last time that OU's had a recruitment at quarterback that's gone this
kind
far?
Of drug out for an
like
extended
this,
period?
that it's been like this, or this maybe even kind of dramatic, like where it's like, hey, like, what's going to, and I know there's some of us that think that, oh, well, he'd like to go to OU, but I mean, LSU's a real player, I would say, in this recruitment. It's interesting. I can't remember the last time. I mean, Caleb Williams was somewhat.
That was a July 4th.
That was a July 4th.
Fireworks.
So I don't know. It just feels like it's been a while.
And very similarly, George, when you're talking about, how this all played out, same deal. Oklahoma had a quarterback that there was a plan in place, and then everything changed kind of suddenly, and everybody had to pivot. In that case, it was Brock Vandagriff decommitting, which I think OU fans, whether you love how Caleb Williams left, thank Caleb Williams for the year you got, because it would have been better than whatever you got out of Brock Vandagriff. I think we've all seen that at this point. But this one, obviously, it's a coaching change that kind of shifted everything and moved it around a little bit. So that's that's largely the case because that's why I call these guys dominoes so frequently. And I mean, I know it's partially just commonplace, but the quarterbacks are just so connected and kind of once a school locks in, every other school kind of knows it and everybody kind of gets in line. You know, like, okay, this guy's going to fall here. Like Jared Curtis, he's the guy that most everyone wanted or wants. And now, okay, now Georgia's got their guy. Okay, now everybody else that doesn't already have their player, they got to kind of figure out where they stand in line, and everybody kind of it's a musical chair situation. You just kind of wait. You're hoping you're not the guy that is still standing when the music stops.
It's going to be interesting. We'll continue to cover the quarterback situation here over the next couple weeks and hopefully get a some type of resolution from that trio of guys, Jaden O'Neal, and then obviously Jared Curtis, who kind of makes his announcement on Monday, May 5th, and then obviously Bo Bentley through the month of June as Oklahoma's big recruiting weekend with the barbecue and everything that comes on June 20th. How does everything kind of end up settling in? Nate Dryling's been very active here over the last couple weeks, Josh. DJ Ackerson from Putnam City commits to Kansas State on Friday, I believe. Saturday. It was over the weekend. That's just another domino to fall there in the linebacker position. We've talked about the DJ Ackerson situation with Oklahoma. It seems like that was maybe more of Oklahoma's choice to make some focus elsewhere. Where's everything kind of stand right now with Oklahoma and the inside linebackers coach making his first run here through spring?
Yeah, you know, you saw him really make his way through St. Louis, which is a place that, you know, guys, we go back to like Ronnie Perkins and, you know, some of the guys of that era. That used to be a place Oklahoma really hit. And I kind of thought when Brent got here, it would be a very focal point. But we know Nate Dreiling, all his connections to Kansas, I'm sure they exist in Missouri as well. So I think they are putting him in that area and saying, hey, you know, let's see what we can kind of stir up here. Last week, Oklahoma makes 2 linebacker offers. One in the 26 class, who, and I've butchered his name every time I've tried to say it, Mason Martin. The alliteration messes with me every time. So Mason Martin is a guy that I've already talked to. He's already setting up his official visit. We talked about it in Scoop last week. There's very real interest there. I think those two really hit it off very quickly. And, you know, Mason was very quick to say, hey, you know, I don't know this guy that well yet, but I really like what he had to say. I'm very interested in Oklahoma. So I think if OU really wants to make a run there, they absolutely can. The other went to 2027 linebacker Marshawn Ivy from a school that's going to be familiar to OU fans, Cardinal Ritter in St. Louis. It's the same school that, you know, not to bring up a bad memory, but Luther Burden was at the time he was committed to Oklahoma. So now he eventually ended up moving over to East St. Louis, and that sent him to Missouri. So maybe you don't have to blame Cardinal Ritter for that. I don't know. You can look at that however you want to. But big, real, you know, real physical linebacker. You're starting to get a picture as you see more offers go out of kind of what Nate Dreiling's looking for. And I don't think Danny Stutzman is going to take physicality along with him out of Oklahoma football. They are going to find big physical tackle-to-tackle guys who can make plays in the run game.
Josh, in regard to Mason, the 2026 offer, who else is involved in his recruitment? What other schools are maybe trying to get him?
Now, he's talked about, you know, when we've spoken, and again, I want to be clear that we've had a couple of brief conversations. I don't want to make it sound like I'm the gospel on his recruitment, but he's mentioned Kansas. He's talked about Kentucky. He even mentioned Oklahoma State. So I think there are schools there that have a longer relationship. But when you look at the history of recruiting, there's nobody there that like I said, if Oklahoma wants to get serious, I've got to think they've got a good chance there. I think that these are schools that you would expect Oklahoma to win recruiting battles against. Now, obviously, like I said, longer standing relationships, you can sometimes have surprises in those kind of scenarios where, you know, he's just so close to this coach or his family really loved this head coach or whatever it may be, that can change things. But if there's one thing Oklahoma does really well in recruiting, it's developing relationships. I struggle to believe that any head coach is going to endear mom and dad more than Brent Venables. Like they may not, you know, Brent may not outdistance them, but they're not going to run away with it. So I think there is a lot of reason to believe that Oklahoma can make up whatever ground they've lost in time and kind of with their name, with the relationships they build. And again, he's already talking about an official visit, so I think that's obviously a really good early indicator.
Do you think they want to add at least 2 linebackers in this class, Josh? Because they're losing Kobe, Kip, Kendall Daniels. All those guys are leaving the program after this year, and I know they love Sammy Omosigo and some of those younger guys, but I would assume they want to add at least, I would guess 2 in this class.
I would say 2's the minimum because, like you're saying, George, like there's some numbers they're going to lose, and obviously we all know if things don't go well, you can go find talent in the portal. Obviously, Kendall Daniels looks like he's going to work out really well for Oklahoma, but again, you look, the Jandro brothers out of Arizona. We've talked a lot about them. You have where one is more of a Mike, or not a Mike, but an inside kind of guy, probably a Will. And then you have, I believe it's Nico. I get them crossed up. Nico is more of like a spur bandit, in Oklahoma's case, a cheetah type of guy. So I think you have some volatility there. And then you look at the guy that we probably don't talk enough about because Oklahoma was really heavily involved early on. And then once Zach Alley left, you kind of wondered where OU was, is Ja'Cory Smith from Parkview Magnet, the former high school teammate of Omarion Robinson. He's supposed to take an official visit this summer. I think Oklahoma is right there with him. And again, what's interesting to me about linebacker is kind of like what I've said at defensive tackle. I see good options that I think Oklahoma is going to land. Exactly how it's going to play out, I think, is interesting. And I think that's, people kind of talk about, recruiting's formulaic and we all kind of know everything. I think Oklahoma's 2026 close is going to be a lot of fun because we don't know exactly what it's going to look like. I mean, we talked about quarterback already. That's got a lot of built-in, volatility. And you look at all these other positions, even receiver, where we thought a few months ago, we kind of knew what that class was going to be. Now I feel really confident about Aljor Miles. They have a commitment from Daniel Odom. I don't expect that to last. So, like, there's a lot of stuff that's, I think, up in the air that I think is going to make it maybe kind of anxiety-ridden for Oklahoma fans, but it won't be boring. Like, it will be interesting to follow.
Last week in the recruiting report, in light of all the news that came out over the weekend, 2 weekends ago with David Stone, we talked about defensive tackle recruiting and what's the future looking like, 26, 27, even some 28 names. There have been 3 new defensive line offers over the last 10 days. Josh, does that tell you that maybe you're missing out on some guys, or is it going to be maybe a bigger class than you expected?
There's a part of me that thinks this could be a bigger class than we're thinking. I will say, I think Oklahoma is realistic that a few guys, like we've talked about Deuce Gerald's for months. Guys, I think they know that's going to be an uphill battle. Like, you're talking about a big-time guy from Georgia with offers from everybody. Ohio State's heavily involved. Larry Johnson is he's a guy that gets a lot of what he wants at Ohio State. I mean, there's a reason that defensive line just produced 4 NFL draft picks and, has more young guys coming. So that's a tough one. But you look at some of the offers they've made, and I don't know that I don't see a thing where you say, okay, well, this guy's an obvious downside. The kid I love is the Teron Richardson kid that they just offered from Virginia. And for those wondering, his name is T-Ron. Like, I couldn't love this guy more. I want him to be part of things.
He needs a single-digit number, though. If he were to get to Norman, a single-digit number, T-Ron, that'd be amazing.
Yes. Like, I feel like 7. I think 7 would just look good on him. I mean, I don't know how that's going to play with the current roster, but for some reason that works. But really like him on tape. Very athletic. He's listed at about 6'4", I think we've got him at 280 if I was looking. Yeah, nailed it. Perfect. But no, I like him. Another one that's interesting is DeAnthony Lafayette. Now, they offered him a couple of weeks ago, a kid out of Orlando, kind of a R. Mason Thomas type, like 6'1", 230, 240. But you watch him on tape, I think he had 16 and a half sacks as a junior last year. Wow. So super explosive, real twitchy guy. Again, some of the same questions R. Mason had, but you're talking about a guy in Florida. He's playing good competition, and he's kicking butt, man. I mean, he's clearly a really good player.
Definitely going to be interesting to continue to watch that defensive line, because it does seem like you're over the, obviously what they brought in with David Stone and Jaden Jackson, and then moving on with Trent Wilson last year. Seems like they're building a pretty good core, and obviously Miguel Chavis on the outside is doing a good job as well.
Over under 2.5 defensive tackles taken in this class, Josh.
I think it's going to be over, George. Like, I think that's the plan. I mean, and you look at the numbers, guys. I think it bears out. I think it. When you look at obviously the graduation of Grayson Halton and Dominic Williams this year, now there's not anybody. I'm not going blank on somebody. I don't have any expectation that they're going to lose someone early, because I don't think there's anybody that's even there in that junior class, if I'm not mistaken.
Marcus Strong is a junior,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
But I mean, he's not.
No,
he's a sophomore.
No,
is he a sophomore?
Or redshirt freshman?
Yeah.
Second year.
He's a second-year guy. Yeah.
So he's the same class as David Stone and Jaden Jackson? Marcus Strong is?
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that. For some reason, I thought he was here longer.
That's why you're trying to throw away
he's a year ahead. He's a red
junior.
He's a red shirt.
So a third year.
Yeah, so
redshirt sophomore.
Yeah, so he could leave.
Yeah,
he
could.
I mean, theoretically, he's not going to.
Are you projecting something that we don't know about Marcus Strong in
Maybe he has
2025?
an unbelievable year, but yeah.
George has predicted 15 TFLs for Marcus Strong.
There you go.
That would be
really
good news.
I was just saying he theoretically could.
Sure.
If
Correct. Yeah, you're right. And I was like, there's somebody I'm forgetting, and that's exactly who it was. But yeah, but you look at it. I mean, beyond that, there's not a lot there. Obviously the move of Nigel Smith, I think that's really interesting. You guys know I've been a big fan of the possibility of him playing on the inside for a long time. Trent Wilson's a very talented guy. I think he just needs to get a little bigger, a little more in the lower body, kind of fill out his frame a little bit. But there's talent there. So if you could, I mean, again, guys, that's what you look at what Brent Venables wants to do with this defense. And he's done it since the day he arrived, even when he didn't have the depth. They want to rotate, man. They want to cycle bodies and run guys out there, and you've got to just keep filling those, like we talked about it. When they landed Jaden Jackson and David Stone, that's great, wonderful. Nigel Smith as well, Danny Okoye, that whole defense line class. You got to go back and do it again the next year, because there's just no rest. Like in the SEC, you just got to keep piling big bodies on top of big bodies.
In, I guess, spirit of the NFL draft, Danny Stutzman goes 4th round to New Orleans. The Saints take him with the 112th pick overall. Billy Bowman, round 4. He goes 6 picks later, 118 to the Atlanta Falcons. Rather small draft class. Obviously, Josh, you wrote about this on Monday morning on SoonerScoop.com. You would expect those numbers to get up, but just real quick with Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman, we cool with where they landed? I know that it works out quite well for Steve Stutzman to have to go to New Orleans 8 times a year next year.
Yeah, I honestly I loved both landing spots for these guys.
It might be some rough years with the Saints, just in terms of win-loss record with Kellen Moore.
He's going into a place where you got a young coach who I think Kellen Moore's a really good football coach, and I think that there's going to be a lot of you say it's they're not going to win a whole lot. That also means that might be some good opportunity for Danny to play a lot.
Sure.
Because they're going to want to play their young players. And I know that, reading some stuff from some Saints writers, they need a Mike linebacker. So I think that, I don't know if he's going to start week 1, but I think if you told me he ended up starting some next year for the Saints, that wouldn't surprise me. And Billy, I think that the Falcons see him playing. I think the nickel is what I heard their GM saying, which I think is a perfect spot for him. And I think that they'll find a way to get him on the field again. What does that look like? Probably certain packages and stuff like that. But the Falcons are a team too, I think that could be better next year.
Michael Penix made some moves at the end of the year. They were pushing the Bucs to get into the playoffs or to win the division.
There's a lot of respect for Raheem Morris in the NFL, and being a defensive guy too, I think he's somebody that will find a lot of unique ways to get Billy involved.
A lot of love down there in the NFC South between the Saints, obviously now with Danny on the roster, Billy Bowman in Atlanta, and then Baker holding things down in Tampa. Josh, what'd you think of the 2 landing spots for the former Sooners?
For Danny, couldn't be more excited. I think that makes all the sense in the world. I was actually just checking my notes here on that. Demario Davis, long time, really good NFL player. He's 36, guys.
Yeah.
He's in his 14th year. you've got to think, he's contracted through this year, but you wonder if at some point in the year there's a little bit of a, passing of the baton, like maybe if Danny goes out and proves himself. And it's, again, kind of like some of these other guys we've seen through the years were like, oh man, he gets to go and learn for a year under a guy that's done it for a long time, is a, kind of a great locker room guy. You would think Danny and DeMario would really be pretty easy to connect, because obviously DeMario's done it so long. I don't think he's going to feel threatened. I think he's going to understand this is the business. This is the way it goes. But at the same, with Billy, it's interesting because Atlanta also took Xavier Watts from Notre Dame, another really good player. Kind of, I've seen some projections already kind of have him in the starting lineup for Atlanta. Guys, I don't know about you. I don't think, like, with Danny Stutzman, I'm shocked he kind of fell out of the third round. I thought his physical traits and everything would kind of push him into the third. With Billy, I knew everybody would knock him. I'm just kind of surprised there aren't a few more people who are like, this is a really good football player, guys. Like, whatever else, like, he's not the biggest guy. He doesn't run 4.3. He's a really good football player. But I've seen some stuff where they've already talked about him maybe starting at nickelback, where, I think could make a lot of sense for him to kind of get his feet wet. And then as he gets, continues to get bigger, grows out, all that, then maybe you could move him to a more traditional NFL safety. I think Billy brings a lot of flexibility. And again, I think you give him a couple years and he'll be an NFL starter.
One of the great plays of the year for Oklahoma defensively, coming up with this fourth down stop in Columbia with Billy Bowman and Danny Stutzman both in pursuit. Trace Ford signs with the New York Giants. Kerry Murdoch put that out on Saturday evening. Ethan Downs signs with the Jacksonville Jaguars. DeJoun Terry getting an opportunity with the Los Angeles Rams. Michael Tarquin with the Carolina Panthers. I know there was a couple more. Caden Woolard signed with the Indianapolis Colts, I believe. Your Colts, Josh.
Ended up somewhere too.
Luke Elzinga signed a free agent deal that was just put out on Sunday evening with it's a tryout with the Colts. Okay. Kerry corrected me there on Caden Woolard. Luke Elzinga signed a minicamp invite or accepted a minicamp invite with the Tennessee Titans. Jake Roberts gets invited to both the Las Vegas Raiders as well as the Kansas City Chiefs minicamp.
Which all of these free agent signings are kind of technically tryout. Some of
you're
them
basically invited to the rookie camp, right?
Yeah, you're invited to the rookie camp, and then
maybe
they
some
get to,
other allocations for some guys, maybe not some for others.
Well, it's mostly just they want to see you in person,
sure.
Work you out, and then they decide if they want to bring you back for the 90-man, actual training camp. So,
and I mentioned it, and Josh wrote about it on Monday. Check out the article on Soonerscoop.com. It just seems like, these numbers the last couple of years, they have not been reflective of what Oklahoma has become accustomed to. And Josh, you put out the note in the article on Monday. I don't want to give too much of away from it, but over the last 20 years, from 2003 to 2023, you were looking at an average of 4 draft picks or more a year, and they've had some pretty low accounts this year with only 2 going this year.
And I will say, though, looking at the previous drafts here, 2000 they only had 2. 2001, after they won the national title, they only had 2. And then 2002, they only had 2. And then they went on the long streak. So, and as Josh points out in his story that he wrote, I think next year, and again, they got to perform well this year. I think next year they could have a handful of guys drafted.
Sure. And
I don't know, Josh, how many would you say? I would say right around 5 to, you could have anywhere from 5 to 8 or 10 maybe next year,
depending on who's going to be entering their name, or Mason's going to lead this list, obviously.
Yeah.
I think 4 are almost certainties with Robert Spears Jennings, R. Mason Thomas, Deion Burks, and Jaden Ott. I think those 4, it would take something really, really wild. And I think it with, and people will say, well, 5th or 6th rounders. I think with R. Mason Thomas and Jaden Ott, you could absolutely be talking second day kind of guys. I think that's a very realistic possibility for both. At the same time, George is right. Like if and we keep talking about this, and I know, as we head into the summer, we'll get more into pivoting towards 2025 and previewing the season and talking about all those things. We've talked about it since the end of last year. There's a world where a lot of things need to hit like the 90th percentile for things to go really right for Oklahoma. We all know that. There are some variables, there's some question marks. Obviously, Javonte Gibson getting hurt didn't help anything. But at the same time, if enough things go right for Oklahoma, there is some talent on this roster. There are some guys. Guys, if Gentry Williams comes back and plays like Gentry Williams is physically capable of, I mean, take the injury conversation out of it and just say his ability, Gentry Williams can be a draft pick. Like, I mean, like there are multiple guys. John Mateer goes out and has a huge year. John Mateer could, I mean, if there's a guy on this team that could be a first-round pick next year, I think it's John Mateer.
Yep.
Like, just because of that position, the way it's valued, that's the guy I would bet on.
Josh, I wanted to ask you before we move on, any offensive linemen? I know obviously they love some of the young guys. Are there any offensive linemen that you could, like, if Jacob Sexton just goes out and has a great year, like, could he end up being somebody that's drafted?
I could see either of the tackles, guys. Like Simmons with his size, and if he'll show out like that he can play at this level, and it kind of sounds like he's just kind of taken that right tackle job, and there hasn't been a lot of debate about it. If he can play to that level, some of the stuff I saw on tape with him, I think he moves pretty well. And again, some of the guys I saw drafted this week, there was a kid that I believe it was the Bears drafted from Boston College. And like the first thing is like, yeah, he's kind of stiff and he doesn't move laterally all that well. And you're like, an NFL tackle? Okay. So, we'll have to see. But I like that piece. Jacob Sexton, with the thing that teams are going to love about him, guys, it's, and George, this from covering the NFL, teams don't have 85-man rosters. They don't have 105-man rosters. So if they can find an offensive lineman that can play a lot of positions, which clearly Jacob Sexton has not only shown an ability to, but a willingness to do, that will buy him a lot of credit. Now, the injury stuff, I wonder if, like if he has a great year, I feel like teams are going to tell him, hey, man, maybe you'd be a fifth rounder this year, but if you'd go back and you can put 2 healthy years together, hey, then maybe we've really got something here. So that's going to be the kind of, and I don't know what that'll look like. I think that's going to be an interesting conversation with Jacob. But, yeah, I mean, you talk about a guy that physically is going to look the part, big, big, tall, strong, sturdy-looking dude. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility, but those are the two. Fabechi, I just don't know that Fabechi moves like you need him to. Troy Everett, I think, is going to get knocked for his size. So there's some questions. But, again, the nice things that OU fans can take solace in, 2026, then you really start like, okay, there's some guys that really project kind of going forward over the next few draft classes at that point.
The good news is you'll be able to watch Michael Fasusi and Ryan Foje, namely, over the next couple seasons here at Oklahoma. Portal report coming up on Tuesday. George is going to be catching up with the Oklahoma kicker, Tate Sandell, to kind of get his thoughts on everything that happened so quickly for him last year, entering the portal on Wednesday, arriving in Norman on Thursday morning and becoming a Sooner by Thursday night. Still waiting on Jermichael Carter to make his decision, the McNeese State wide receiver. The good news, I guess, would be come Monday morning, Pete Nakos had reported that he is not taking the visit to Knoxville.
Correct. Well, for now. It sounds like that
he might. He's not doing it today, though.
Yeah, it has been postponed, canceled, whatever. I think Tennessee still wants to get him on campus.
Okay.
I think he's reconsidering, and I think that's good news for Oklahoma. We'll see how it plays out. I was told by his agent that there should be a decision by the end of the week, whether that's today on Monday or if that's on Friday. I think we'll know.
Sure.
I think OU feels good about where it's at. He also visited Baylor last week. He did visit Vanderbilt over the weekend. So I would guess right now it's going to be one of those 3 schools. If he gets to campus on Tennessee, we'll probably take that back. Yes. Yeah.
All bets will be off. We'll see about Jermichael Carter. He'll be playing football in the SEC next year. I think we feel pretty comfortable about that unless somebody else comes up. Friday night, there was some news on Gavin Sawchuk. He has decided to enter the transfer portal. George, you and Pete Nakos had reported on this on Friday night. It obviously comes to reality over the weekend. We're far removed, and I kind of forgotten about this, but far removed from the end of 2023 when Gavin Sawchuk went 5 games consecutively for over 100 yards. Of course, this was on the heels of 2022 when him and Javante Barnes burst onto the scene, both with 100-yard games against Florida State. But, Gavin Sawchuk, I understand it. When you have Jaden Knott coming in, it makes a lot of sense that he would be looking elsewhere.
Yeah, look, the running back room just got too full. And, I think this was somewhat of a mutual parting because Oklahoma looks at that running back room and says, okay, we got Jaden Knott, who I think is clearly the starter in that room. You love what you saw from Xavier Robinson to end the year. Javonte Barnes was playing good football before he got hurt. You still like the potential of a Taylor Tatum. It looks like he's going to be sticking around. Torrey Blaylock apparently had a really good spring. They love his speed. It's like, where does somebody like a Gavin Sawchuk fit in? And I think the moment they added Jaden Ott, we all knew there was likely going to be a departure in that room, and it just so happens to be Gavin Sawchuk. And look, I think Gavin's a nice football player. Is he a big-time difference maker at that position? I just don't think so. And I like Gavin. I think he's great. His family's awesome. Was a pleasure talking to him all the time. And like you said, he was really good at the end of that 2023 season. I just think Oklahoma has maybe some more talent in there, and I think Gavin also can go somewhere and start and probably make more money than he was making at Oklahoma. That's the honest truth.
Certainly find his way onto the field, especially after seeing his carries go from 120 for 744 in 2023 to just 39 for 128. Obviously, you had 3 less games. He played in 12 in 2023, 9 last year in 2024, just like everybody else, it seemed like, in that running back group. Josh, any comment on that? It seems like the writing was kind of on the wall there, though. They were going to lose a body in the running back room.
Guys, and to me, and George kind of, laid it out. I think he was the guy that made the most sense. Robinson and Blaylock, they aren't really affected by Jaden Ott. They're young. They've got time. Those guys just made sense. Barnes and Sawchuk were the ones you were kind of like, okay, something's got to give here. There's no reason for both those guys to stay. And I think Barnes is a really good compliment to Jaden Ott, where you have Ott's speed and his ability out in space and all those things. Where Barnes, you're like, Jaden, Javonte, we need 3 yards here. Like, go, hammers and nails. Like, go to work there. So I like that kind of having that ability. But again, I'm all for anything. I kind of joked with you guys about it. I'm all for anything that takes away any distraction that Jaden Ott shouldn't be the clear bell cow in this backfield. Like, sure. I don't want anything, because we've looked at it, guys, where the running back rotations over the last couple of years, you're like, I'm sure there's things that I don't know and don't understand, but I didn't understand the choices that were made. Like, I couldn't always make, heads or tails of why this guy was playing and why this guy wasn't. Jaden Ott, there should be no doubt. If he's healthy, he's your starter. He's getting 70% of the carries. Like, that should just be the way it is. So anything to remove any possible, any possible confusion, I think is absolutely the best thing for this team.
No doubts about it. Ditto on everything that you and George said there. All right, that's going to do it for a recruiting report / NFL draft recap from a Oklahoma side of things, and then even a little portal stuff for you on a Monday here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel. Looking forward to the interview with Tate Sandell coming up on Tuesday, as well as another familiar face, I believe, that is joining Joe Castiglione Jr. and Isaac Stoops this week on The Family Business. For Josh and George, I'm Eddie. We'll see you back here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel.